Cam Newton's departure from ESPN caught a lot of people off guard across the sports media world. As a former NFL MVP who seemed to be building real momentum on television, he looked like someone whose spot was secure until ESPN decided to move on. Instead of quietly accepting the decision, Newton responded with an unfiltered message that pulled back the curtain on how he believes the media business really operates. His biggest takeaway wasn't just about losing one job, it was about who controls the platform. As Newton put it, if you don't own your own platform, you're eventually going to be overlooked, passed by, and disappear like the dinosaurs. That one statement summed up the larger point he was making and turned his exit into an argument about the entire industry. Rather than treating the layoff as an isolated event, he presented it as proof that relying on someone else's platform leaves you vulnerable whenever that company changes direction. Newton compared it to the dinosaurs, saying they didn't necessarily fail because they were bad, they simply couldn't adjust before their environment changed around them. In his view, even the biggest jobs in traditional sports media carry that same risk because the rules can shift without warning. And to show this wasn't just a catchy comparison, Newton pointed to a specific example that he believed backed up his entire argument.
And when you look at other sports personalities having and taking control of their own narrative,
Newton reinforced his point by bringing up Emmanuel Acho, another former NFL player who left Fox Sports and went on to build Speakeasy as an independent platform. Instead of asking viewers to simply believe his theory, he pointed to Acho's path as real-world proof that stepping away from a major network can still lead to success. Another part of the story made the timing especially interesting. Before ESPN made anything official and before the headlines started circulating, Newton had already shared a direct, no-filter motivational post on Instagram telling people to stop being weak. That message went live the very same morning the layoffs were reportedly being finalized behind the scenes. He wasn't posting with the knowledge that he would be affected, but once the news became public, the words he had already shared lined up almost perfectly with the response he later gave about his own situation. Whether you see that as coincidence or instinct is up to you, but the connection between his earlier post and his reaction afterward is hard to miss. For a lot of people, losing a job just hours after making a public statement would completely change the way that message was viewed. In Newton's case, he didn't have to adjust his approach at all because he simply continued expressing the same perspective he had already been sharing. As more attention shifted to his departure, those earlier comments naturally became the explanation many people were looking for. He then applied that same line of thinking to Ryan Clark, making it clear that being laid off is one thing, but what happens after that is what really defines the outcome.
Unfortunate what happened to Ryan Clark, but what I will tell you is this. Ryan Clark, the pivot ain't going well.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate what happened to me, some would think, but I'm good.
Newton didn't present either himself or Ryan Clark as casualties of the business. Instead, he argued that both had already built something beyond a network job, giving them the ability to keep moving even if the industry made a different decision. That idea of a pivot was central to his message because it suggested an ESPN role was never supposed to be the final destination, just one chapter in a much bigger career. From that perspective, losing the position only becomes a major setback if there's nothing else waiting on the other side. The reaction across sports media followed a familiar pattern. Many commentators viewed Newton's departure as part of ESPN's broader effort to reduce staff, while podcasts covering the industry used it to highlight how unpredictable television careers have become for former athletes. The discussion wasn't really about whether Newton's point was valid. It was more about the fact that he said it immediately, publicly, and attached his own name to it instead of keeping those thoughts behind closed doors. That brings us to the circumstances behind the layoffs themselves. ESPN's latest round of cuts took place on Tuesday, July 21, 2026, and Cam Newton was among the employees affected. He first joined the network in October 2024 as an occasional Friday guest on First Take alongside Stephen A. Smith, gradually becoming a familiar face. After that arrangement proved successful, ESPN rewarded him with a multi-year extension in August 2025 that expanded his role into a regular Monday co-hosting spot. That agreement, however, didn't even make it to the one-year mark before the layoffs arrived. Newton wasn't alone either, as Ryan Clark, Cara Reves, Stefania Bell, Tom Pelissero, and Bart Scott were all included in the same round of cuts. There was no single controversy or specific incident connected to those decisions. The layoffs were tied to budget and organizational restructuring, as ESPN absorbed NFL network operations following Disney's broader company-wide workforce reductions. When businesses combine departments, overlapping positions often lead to staff reductions, and that's the situation Newton found himself in. Just hours before the news became public, he had posted a direct, R-rated motivational message on Instagram encouraging people to stop being weak, At the time, no one knew he would soon be part of the story himself, but once Tuesday's announcements were confirmed, that post took on a very different meaning. Later that same day, Newton addressed everything on his own show, 4th and 1 with Cam Newton.
Well, Cam, what do we have here, man? We heard the news about Ryan Clark.
The discussion kicked off with a single question, and from that point, the entire segment revolved around breaking down his response. He didn't take long to give the basic version, but it ended up taking the rest of the show to explain everything behind it. What stood out was the way he handled it, because there was no anger or frustration in his voice as he answered.
Well, Cam, what do we have here, man? We heard the news about Ryan Clark and later heard the news about yourself in regards to ESPN. So
from the beginning, Cam Newton made it clear he wasn't blaming any one executive. He stayed calm and framed the entire situation as a business decision, not a personal dispute. The layoffs explained why he lost his ESPN role, but they didn't explain why the story spread across Yahoo Sports, TMZ, and the New York Post. That happened because Newton used the moment to make a broader statement about the sports media industry instead of simply reacting to being fired. To understand his message, you have to look at the corporate restructuring, his 2 years at ESPN, why he says he won't return, and what he plans to do next. His resume as a former NFL MVP, Heisman Trophy winner, and Super Bowl quarterback didn't protect him from Disney's cost-cutting. As Disney merged NFL network operations into ESPN, overlapping positions were eliminated, and Newton was just one of several well-known names affected. Ryan Clark, Carl Ravitch, Stefania Bell, Tom Pelissero, and Bart Scott were all part of the same wave of cuts. When respected veterans and established personalities are let go together, it says more about corporate restructuring than individual performance.
It's unfortunate what happened to Ryan Clark, but what I will tell you is this: Ryan Clark will be okay. The pivot ain't going nowhere.
The news didn't break all at once. Ryan Clark's departure was reported first, followed by Cam Newton's as ESPN's layoffs unfolded one name after another. Newton recognized that pattern right away and made it clear he wasn't trying to compare his situation with anyone else's. Instead, he focused on explaining his own experience within the larger wave of cuts.
Did not have that education. I am a former athlete that did not study journalism when I had the opportunity to study it while I was studying in school.
The layoffs showed just how broad ESPN's restructuring really was. A former Heisman Trophy winner, NFL MVP, and Super Bowl quarterback ended up in the same round of cuts as longtime broadcasters, proving this wasn't about one person's performance. What made it even more surprising was that Cam Newton had signed a contract extension in August 2025 that expanded his role as a regular Monday co-host alongside Stephen A. Smith. Less than a year later, that opportunity disappeared because of a larger corporate restructuring, not because his work was falling short. That's the difference between being let go for performance and losing a position during company-wide cost-cutting. By all accounts, Newton was doing well, but overlapping roles became the priority as Disney reshaped ESPN's football coverage. Reports from multiple outlets all pointed to the same explanation, while podcasts like the Joe Budden podcast and The Breakfast Club discussed the layoffs as one major event rather than separate scandals. With that context established, the bigger story became how Newton responded. In just 2 years at ESPN, despite having no broadcasting background or journalism experience, he built a television career and then used his exit to share a much broader message about the media business.
Molly Carroll, Shea Cornett, obviously Stephen A.
Yeah.
Ryan Clark, when you have Dan Orlovsky, Peter Schrager, the list goes on.
Cam Newton made sure to credit the people who helped him grow during his time at ESPN. He went through a long list of names, almost like he was delivering a thank you speech instead of explaining his departure. That moment showed he viewed those 2 years as a learning experience, and he made it clear he appreciated everyone who played a role in that journey.
Bro, I'm a professional at what I do. And I will reiterate, you cannot, you will not make me hate my experience with ESPN.
Cam Newton's admission that he entered ESPN with no broadcasting experience makes his rise even more significant. He didn't become Stephen A. Smith's regular Monday co-host simply because he was a former NFL star. After spending nearly a year proving himself on Friday appearances, he earned a contract extension in August 2025. His partnership with Stephen A. Smith became a major part of that journey, although it wasn't always smooth. One of the biggest moments of tension came when Newton invited Jason Whitlock onto his own podcast, despite Smith's long-standing public criticism of Whitlock. That decision showed Newton was determined to keep his creative independence even while working inside a major corporate network. He continued running his own platform on his own terms, booking the guests he wanted without seeking approval. Even with those disagreements, Newton ended up speaking about Stephen A. Smith with complete respect, showing there was no lasting bad blood between them.
Only thing I can look at now, I will not be going back to First Take.
The way Cam Newton talked about ESPN didn't sound like someone holding on to resentment. He was genuinely thankful for the relationships and opportunities he had there. At the same time, he made one thing absolutely clear. His appreciation didn't mean he wanted the job back. Without leaving any room for doubt, Newton said he had no interest in returning.
If it was up to me, I still left with some things that you can't pay for. And that's relationships.
Yeah.
That's connections.
Cam Newton quickly balanced that statement with what he valued most from his time at ESPN. He made it clear that while he had no desire to return to the job, he would always appreciate the relationships he built during those 2 years. For Newton, the chapter was closed, but the respect he had for the people he worked alongside remained unchanged.
You can't make me hate ESPN.
No.
What I've learned, it was an internship.
Looking at his full comments, the message becomes much clearer. Cam Newton said the relationships he built were something money couldn't replace, but he also made it clear he was leaving that ESPN role behind. That wasn't the mindset of someone holding a grudge. It was simply him drawing a line between the people he valued and the corporate system he worked in. The relationships were coming with him, but the job itself was staying in the past. He even used one word that summed up his entire 2-year experience better than anything else he said.
The day that Matt Patricia and Bill Belichick released me from the New England Patriots.
Cam Newton described his time at ESPN as an internship, not a career or permanent destination. In his view, those 2 years were a chance to learn, grow, and prepare for what he really wanted to build on his own. That perspective makes it clear how he wants this chapter to be remembered, and naturally leads to the next question: what comes next? According to Newton, the answer is independence. He said he's been through difficult transitions before, which is why his response sounded measured instead of emotional. Rather than dwelling on the layoff, he appeared focused on the next stage of building his own platform.
The day that nothing else could surprise me in business. And I'm grateful that I had that to be able to refer to.
Cam Newton said he had already gone through a similar experience at the end of his NFL playing career. According to him, that moment permanently changed the way he handles disappointing news from an organization. Because of that, this latest setback didn't shake him. It reinforced a mindset he had already developed.
This iconic saga, 4th and 1, Funky Friday, anything content can, that's my passion.
Cam Newton connected this moment to one of the biggest setbacks of his career, being released by the Patriots. He said that experience taught him how to deal with disappointment, so losing his ESPN role didn't affect him the same way. Instead of feeling shaken, he relied on lessons he had already learned from football. That calm mindset is also why he immediately shifted the focus to the projects he fully controls. Newton made it clear that 4th and 1, the football show where he shared these comments, and Funky Fridays, his lifestyle and relationship show, are where his real passion lies. For him, those platforms, not an ESPN seat, represent the future he truly wants to build.
You got Rich, you got John Pierre, the whole team.
Cam Newton made it clear that this is why he's choosing independence over another corporate job, no matter how attractive it might be. Working for a company like Disney means helping carry out someone else's vision within someone else's rules.
Yeah. But I don't take myself serious. I take my experiences. And that experience that I had with Disney by way of ESPN.
Cam Newton was also clear about what comes next. He said everything he learned during his 2 years at ESPN will now be put toward the business he actually owns. Rather than viewing that experience as the final destination, he sees it as preparation for building his own brand. In his mind, ESPN was a place to learn, but his long-term future is creating something that's entirely his.
It's this, it gets me in my feelings. I'll be lying if it didn't.
Cam Newton wrapped up his message with a simple idea. Everything he learned at ESPN will help him build what's next. He wasn't saying the layoff didn't hurt, and he never pretended to be unaffected. Instead, he explained that disappointment doesn't have to determine the next chapter. For Newton, the real goal is owning his platform, his voice, and his future. That's why he views his 2 years at ESPN as an internship rather than a destination. He took the relationships, experience, and behind-the-scenes knowledge with him while leaving the corporate role behind. At a time when traditional sports media is changing rapidly, Newton believes owning your own platform is the strongest position to be in. Cam Newton's message reached beyond sports media. He suggested that relying on someone else's platform is never a permanent solution, especially as the industry continues to change. With 4th and 1 and Funky Fridays, he believes owning the platform gives him the freedom to shape his own future. Whether he returns to a major network or stays independent remains to be seen. For now, his response has been clear. Instead of letting the ESPN layoff define him, he's using it as motivation to build something that's entirely his own.